welcome everybody, and welcome to my special guest, Jessica Weiss. Thank you for joining us, Jessica.
Thank you so much for having me.
And I'm going to introduce her in just a minute, but I wanted everybody to know if you're watching this, not listening to this, Jessica looks like she's being interrogated because of her backdrop, not because of her expression. And that is only because she is in a Manhattan skyrise and it is super duper noisy. And so she has found herself in a soundproof room, and we are excited she's not being kidnapped or interrogated, and that she is here with us to talk about happiness. And she just congratulations first on your awesome TEDx talk. That was fun and informative and sassy and brilliant. So
Oh, thank you so much. It was fun. It was a great experience, and it was really exciting for me to be able to share, all of my knowledge that's kind of floating in my brain. It was really excited to put it out in that kind of medium and to that audience.
and taking everything that's floating in your brain and putting it into 16 to 18 minutes is not easy. So
No, it is not.
way to go. Way to go. And today you have more than 20 minutes. We're just going to riff and have fun and help people. And the TED Talk was all about how can we actually be happier. And you are not a psychiatrist. You're not a sociologist. People might think you might be a counselor. You are a business consultant, and you are talking about happiness, which I think is so cool. So let me just tell people a little bit about you. You're an expert in happiness, leadership, culture, and organizational development, and has spent the last 15 years, as if you're that old, speaking to thousands of people, doing tons of research all about happiness. And you've got a ton of clients, including J&J, Pfizer, Coca-Cola, LVMH, Hearst, American Express. So you've worked in the big leagues and as a management consultant with the focus on organizational transformation. And you're a lightweight because you only graduated from the University of Pennsylvania and you have an MBA from Columbia. So welcome. We are excited to have you. And I look forward to this conversation. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So like I said, you were an expert in a field that doesn't typically focus on happiness. It's more about productivity and engagement and things like that. And so I just want to know, how did you carve out this niche of interest when it comes
Yeah.
to helping businesses and people?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, what I found was throughout all of my work, and I did a lot of, we went into those big organizations, and at the heart of what we were really doing, when we really started talking to people, what everybody started to say, whether it was an individual or whether it was a team, it was like, how can I get happier at work? How can I enjoy my work more? So, we were coming in with this big remit of doing a big organizational transformation and really examining culture. And the question was, why do certain cultures flourish and other cultures don't? But the real question, like the real thing that everybody wanted to know was, how can I get happier at work? So that was always the thing that was the fuel that got me going, because that's my personal area of interest. So it was interesting to me that in these huge organizations, that was the question. That was the thing that everybody was looking for.
And I'm curious because did they actually say the word happy, or did you distill that? Because for some people, it seems like happiness is so removed and far
Yeah.
away from where they are right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm just curious, was it obvious?
Right. Okay. So that's a great question. And I feel like happiness is kind of a word that maybe is tainted with, it's a little frivolous. It's a little silly. This is not something that we should be talking about in corporate America. So no, they didn't necessarily say to me, how can I get happier at work? But it was more like, oh my God, I feel stuck. How can I get more motivation? How can I love my job again? So when you really started to dig in on that, I was like, you're looking for more happiness at work. You're looking for more contentment, more satisfaction, more fulfillment, whatever we want to call it. I personally love the word happiness. I'm not afraid to use it. I love it. I embrace it. But it takes a million, different guises depending upon who's saying it and in what context they're saying it.
I am so glad that you had the courage to use the frickin' word,
Yeah.
happiness. And I use its other friend, joy,
Yes.
all the time because I feel like there is an absence of joy in people's lives. And I remember when I started working with an old friend and she decided to be one of my clients, she it is one of the most joyful people I ever remember meeting. And when I started working with her, or deciding whether we should work together, if she was a good fit, and she says in her Southern accent, Denise, I cannot access joy.
Right.
And I'm just like, what?
Right.
If this
Right.
woman can't access joy, what is going on in the world? And it's in our physiology, it's from our environment. It is really hard without help and without tools like you're going to tell us about because you have researched this to get there.
Well,
And
exactly that. And I think that there's the thing that's actually really, for me, really comforting around it, because I'm somebody who's like, as you can see, right, my background is in business and in consulting. So I'm really someone who's grounded in very specific, tangible strategies, right? I want to say, okay, we're talking about happiness, great, fine, well, but tell me how to do it. And the joyful thing here, right? The great thing here is that there's decades of scientific research now that goes to happiness. And this is like real scientific proven stuff, whether it's neuroscience or social psychology or from whatever angle that we want to get to. But there is specific research that can give us strategies, tools, and tactics that we can all use to build happiness. And that's what I find so exciting.
okay, so I know you got a million of them, but let's start with your favorite. What is your favorite strategy for people to develop happiness? And happiness, people, is not emoji happiness.
Exactly.
It's not outside in happiness. It is
Exactly.
inside out happiness. So
Exactly.
so what is one of your favorite strategies for going from the to
Yes. Okay, so my most favorite one, I say this one all the time. I will say it in like a million different ways, whether we're talking about happiness, just living your life, whether we're talking happiness at work. This is the one. This is the key. It's friends. Friends are magic. Friends are a proven happiness booster. So, whether we're talking about just the quality of our relationships in our outside of work life, or we're talking about do you have a best friend at work? Friendship is the key to happiness. So the irony here is, and I don't know if you're anything like me, but at the end of a long day or when I have like a million things to do at work, the last thing I want to do is start to like even though I love it and I want to have a fun conversation, I'm like, oh my God, I have no time. I have a million things I have to do. I have no time for friends right now. But the truth is, that is the key to happiness. The absolute key. Friends are magic.
I love that so much. I love that so much. And what a perfect example to do, like when you don't feel like it at all. And I was talking about this with my client group, and one of them said that they have a hack where it's scheduled.
Oh, that's
It's
awesome.
4 friends. And so they rotate on, I forget what day it is. It's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I don't know. I think it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. 5 o'clock, they all have an appointment to go on a walk.
Yeah,
Take the dog if you want, walk the dog, and call the friend that's in your rotation. And so it gets them off work, it gets
exactly.
them outside walking,
Outside, exactly.
and it gets them oxytocin,
Yep.
the love drug, on the phone. I'm like, that is one of the most brilliant hacks I've ever heard.
Brilliant. I try to do that in my life too. So if I need like a break, if I need a 20-minute break, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to call a friend. And, it's like habit stacking, right? So you're walking. So you're doing that. That's great for you. You're getting outside. Another key for happiness. Even me, who lives in the middle of Manhattan, I go into Central Park and I'm surrounded by nature and it just does things for my brain. And then the brilliance of actually connecting with a friend. I mean, I cannot stress this one enough. We need friends. And it's not about having a million friends. It's just about quality friendships, people who genuinely support you, who will cheer you on, who will cry with you when necessary, who will give you a talking to get you out of your rut. But friends are the key to happiness.
And friends who will bitch slap you in the face when you forget who you are.
Yes,
Like,
exactly. Exactly.
wait a minute. Who is this? Who is this I'm talking to?
Exactly. Jessica, my mother says it to me all the time. Jessica, you remember who you are.
I love her. You mentioned the phrase, do you have a best friend at work? And for those who don't know, that was number 6, I believe it was, on the Gallup Q12. Those
Yes,
questions that they
exactly.
they found through millions of data points, those were the questions, the 12 questions. And I want to know if you hit the same resistance I did about that. So when I would try and implement engagement surveys at
Yeah.
work, I would try and do a version of that. Like, do you
Yeah.
have a best friend at work? And leaders would be like, that's just fluff.
I know. First of all, I know it's a strangely worded question, and you have to real like at least me, and I'm sure you've thought about this too. I feel like Gallup is so intentional with every single one of their words. So I always think it was an interesting way that they chose to ask that. It's not like do you have friends at work? It's
Right.
do you have a best friend at work? And I think that that's actually the thing that repels people, right? Because it feels a little, I don't know, schoolyard talk, like who's your
Yep.
best friend,
Yep.
right? So yes, I absolutely have met with resistance from it. And the big thing that I also hear, and is this in addition to, oh, that's fluff and we're here to talk about work and we're not here to talk about friends, is friends are for friends and work is for work and the two shall never meet. And I'm like, you know what? That is a concept that needs to be left 100 years ago. Like we need to actually incorporate all of the good stuff that we know because friends are essential to work, essential to work, essential to happiness. And when leaders say stuff like that to me, I'm like, well, do you want to increase productivity? Do you want to increase retention? Do you want to increase creativity, problem solving, raise your stock prices? Then let your people have friends at work. In fact, you need to encourage it. You need to facilitate it.
Oh, I freaking love this. It makes me think of one resource that we might be able to send leaders to, but you tell me if you have another one. But besides Gallup, I don't know if you've read Amy Banks. She wrote this book, Wired to Connect, a few years ago, and it sounds like a really boring neuroscience book. It was a page turner.
Oh, I haven't
And
read it. I need to read it.
oh my God, you're going to love it. You're going to love it. And she's such a good writer, too. She's a wonky scientist who's a great writer. And she's done the research on connection and the vagus nerve, which, as you know, is the major nerve system in the body that regulates the atomic nervous system, which means if it's not working, you're going to be stressed out and very, very
Exactly.
sick.
Yep.
And you won't be able to socialize. You won't have the basic need, the basic ability. And what she found in her research was the number one way to heal the vagus nerve was through safe social connection.
Sure. That makes perfect sense.
And so all your little Facebook friends who are not true friends, I think that you reminded me of this when you said the best
Yeah.
and why they worded it that way. You have to have somebody who sees you
Yes.
and who you can say anything to
Yes.
without feeling judged. That is the friendship you're talking about.
Exactly. It needs to be a genuine, authentic connection. And in fact, the research has even shown that in order to have genuine friendships at work, the relationship or your conversation needs to go beyond work. You need to be able to talk about personal stuff. So like there are certain earmarks that will tell you when your friendships at work have moved to a different level. And it's that ability to start to talk about personal stuff that really transforms the connection to exactly that genuine, true, and you don't need many. To be perfectly honest, if you have one, I think you're good to go. If you've got more than one, you are gifted and it is a blessing. But if you have one, you are good to go.
Oh, I think that'll be a relief for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so in order to get that one, you've got to be vulnerable, right?
Yes.
You can't have you can't have them being the only one that shares beyond the work. And I'm from the Midwest. I don't, so in the Midwest, conversations usually go about this deep.
Right.
Weather, Kansas City Chiefs. What else? What are we talking about now?
Right.
And it's not all that. My family is very good at deep conversations, but it's just kind of a cultural thing.
Of
So
course.
wherever you live, you got to find that person who is really comfortable being vulnerable. Okay, I love that. I love that we started with that, but now let's talk about money.
Yeah. Well, money is a big one. Money is a big one when it comes to happiness. It's the trickster in this, right? I think that so many people spend so much of their working life chasing money. And you know what? And I actually, before we even start this conversation about money, I want to say this. Money is a very real thing. We all need money, right? It's important. I do not in any way want to minimize money. But I think it's like a nuanced conversation. So there's a number of different ways that we could start to talk about money. But the big one, the first thing that I want to say is this. we all think that we will be happy when, right? We will be happy when we get the promotion. We will be happy when we get the title. We will be happy when we get the relationship or fit into the jeans or whatever it is, right? It's this moving target of, or when we buy the house or the big car. It's this moving target that puts happiness out into the future. And what the research has shown is that when you look for happiness from those big things, from the car, from the house, from the promotion, from the salary, whatever it is, happiness from the big things will never, never, never last. Now, the research says this, and I kind of have a bone to pick with the research, but let's just go with it for a second. The research says happiness from the big things will last at a maximum 6 months. But from my personal experience, and I don't know if you found this to be true, Denise, it doesn't even go for 6 months. Like, you don't even get a 6-month reprieve from when you finally get to achieve the big goal and you're like, okay, now I have the happiness, now it's here. It's never 6 months, but that's the first thing I want to say about happiness.
And if anybody doubts what you're saying, they should look up hedonic adaptation.
Exactly.
Because you just have a baseline and you just keep changing your baseline once you get something new, unless you practice happiness in the now and gratitude in the now for that big boat you bought or that Tesla new version you bought or something like that. So should we talk about, we have so many places we could go.
There's one thing that I want to say about money, and it's and I think that this is something, in addition to what I just said. So don't spend your time chasing the money. The money is not going to bring you happiness. How many times have you either coached somebody or had a friend who's taken a job because they've, oh my God, how could I not take this job? It's quadruple the salary, double the salary. It's guaranteed to be awesome. And then they're like, oh my God, I have made the biggest mistake of my entire life. I don't care how much they pay me, this job is not worth it, right? I mean, we've all heard that a million times. But I do want to say this one thing about money, because this is kind of something that like sticks in my straw. Is that the expression? Stick it in your hat or whatever it is. A bee in your bonnet. Something.
There you go. That'll work.
It's this. There was a study probably about 10 or 15 years ago, and I'm sure you've heard of it, where they said that once you make $75,000, once you make 75K, no money above that 75K will bring you increased happiness at work. So in other words, someone who's making 75K, somebody who's making 150K, somebody who's making 500K, the money is actually irrelevant to their happiness at work. And this was like a really popular study. There's a guy who's all over, I don't know, Instagram or LinkedIn, and he's like, I pay everybody 75K. The CEO, I took a cut to, I think there's actually some like dark part of that story that we should probably leave out. But anyway, but I now only make 75K, as though 75K was this magic number. And more recent research on this 75K, because I was always like, how is that possible? Like, I mean, I understand what the kind of the premise is there, right? 75K, you can pay your bills, you can eat, you can kind of function, and you're not miserable. You're not unhappy because of your lack of money. But I have to say that if you make 75K or you make 475K, there might be a different level of happiness, right? There might be a little more happiness with a little bit more money. It is by no means the key to happiness, but I think it's silly to kind of say 75K is the answer to all things money when it comes to happiness. I think the conversation is a bit more nuanced than that. Do you agree with me?
Absolutely. And I know a lot of people, I'm here in the Bay Area, you're in Manhattan, would say like 75K is like, what? Like,
yeah.
But even that, there is a threshold, I think, is what we're hearing. You need, because the brain has negativity bias and the brain has scarcity bias. We're always hunting for more resources. So we're not going to change that about the brain. So you need some level to allow you to have ease and comfort, and then whimsy, because we all need uncertainty too. Like, should we go on this, our sailboat or our thing? Like, so yes, you need, depending on what your needs are, to meet that threshold. But then after that, I totally agree with you. Then after that, I will tell you, I can guarantee, if we could call him up now, if we asked Richard Branson if his toys make him happy, there would be an absolute no. Does he enjoy his toys? Yes. But what does he enjoy
Exactly.
about it? He enjoys the friends he brings on them. He enjoys
Exactly.
freedom. He enjoys
Exactly.
creativity. He enjoys purpose.
Exactly. The experience of it, exactly. I just feel like that conversation around money needs a bit of nuance. I don't want to be quite so cavalier as to say once you make 75K, money is off the table. I actually don't think that's true, but I very much also believe that you cannot think that money is going to be the key to happiness at work.
Right. Okay, so we got friends. We got enough money that you're not in constant fear. Let's put it that way.
Yes. Yes.
Because if you don't know how to enjoy your things, you're not going to be happy.
Yes.
And this is a skill that you have to cultivate. You have to learn. I think many people have forgotten how how to feel happy.
Yes. Absolutely. I think that we move through life with I mean, I think that we move through life with so many things to do and so much focus on getting everything done and this whole busy thing that happy and joy and contentment and satisfaction, we don't even know how to access it anymore.
Right. Well, I'm gonna show a little chart in just a minute that I use that helps people access it. But you have some tools. So, first of all, we've talked a little bit about money and jobs. So there is something besides how much you're paid, because
Sure.
if you have a job you hate, you're not going to be
Yes.
happy, no matter what they pay you, like you said. So you found that there are two main characteristics. There are probably a lot, but two main ones that you have to have in your
Yes.
job in order for that job to feel happy, no matter what it's paying you. So
Yes,
what are
exactly.
those?
So no matter what you do, I don't care what you do, it doesn't matter what your job is. Your job needs to have these two characteristics in order for you to start to feel happiness at work. And the first one is that you have to feel that your success is earned. You have to feel that you deserve this job, that you did something to get there, that your hard work landed you in this spot. So the first one is that you have to feel that your success is earned. And the second one is this. You have to, okay, the second one just flew out of my brain. So just give me 1 second.
No worries, no worries. I'm gonna actually say something because
Yes, tell me.
I wrote down a note. I love what you just said. And here's the crazy thing. So I work with women. I work with some men too, but I work with women. And more so than men, women, even if they have PhDs and just credentials out the wazoo, often don't think they deserve the
Yes,
job. We call that
yes,
imposter syndrome.
yes,
And I can tell you, so when I know you know this, so when you say you have to feel like you've earned the job, it's true. It's not just like you've
yes,
earned the job because you worked hard for it. You
yes.
have to feel it. And so if
Well,
you
and
have a voice in your head, you won't be
exactly,
happy.
exactly. And that leads me right to the second thing.
I thought it might.
Thank you so much. The second one is this. You have to feel a sense of purpose with your work, right? And that, let's break down the word purpose because I feel like purpose sometimes is this really big concept that is kind of another one that's very difficult to access. But it's this. You have to feel that you are doing something in your job that somebody could not do for themselves, whatever it is. So whether you are a doctor finding a cure for cancer, or you are somebody who works in a retail store who has given somebody the most gorgeous pair of sunglasses they have ever seen in their life and they feel like a brand new person. But you have to feel in your job that you are doing something that they cannot do for themselves. So your success has to be earned and you have to be doing something for somebody that they cannot do for themselves.
Beautiful. I'm thinking of like hairstylists,
Exactly.
beauticians.
It's anything. I mean, there's a great story where, JFK visited, this was like during the whole space, the space, when we were racing Russia to get to the moon. And JFK visited NASA and he, was like a greeting line, he was meeting all the scientists and everybody who works at NASA up and down the entire line. And he met one gentleman and he said, "What do you do here?" And he said, "Well, I take care of the facilities and I be sure that everything is in proper order. And really what my job is, I make it so that these guys can put somebody on the moon." So his job was to take care of the operations and the facilities and whatever it was, whether it was cleaning the floor or making sure that the telephones worked. But he had accessed his purpose in that I am part of this big thing here. I am helping somebody. I'm doing my part to put a man in the mood
Or woman, but now
or a
it's
woman.
now,
At
but
that
not
time, it was
not
a
not
man.
back then, not back then, as you know. I love that. So it's not just that you're using your strengths. He was probably good at what he did. I mean, that's important. Gallup said that was important. But how are you defining what the meaning is of those strengths that you're using? So I just love that
Yeah.
anecdote.
Well, once you tie your strengths to like a bigger part of the organization, right? A bigger purpose, that's when you've started to find the magic, right? So once you know that you're doing the stuff that you're good at and you're doing the stuff that's helping somebody do something that they would not otherwise be able to do. And then if you could actually tie that to the greater goal of the organization, that's really, now we're starting to really, you love where you work, you are committed to the organization, you're productive, like you're hitting it from so many places that your level of satisfaction at work has now just gone through the roof. Now, none of those things are easy to do. I mean, to start to kind of to take your own personal strengths and start to tie it to a greater good in the organization is a pretty difficult thing. But if you can spend some time and kind of design your job craft your the way that you're thinking about things, to think about that, that's when you'll start to achieve greater levels of satisfaction, greater levels of joy at work.
I love it. And since we've both dealt with leaders and leadership and the impact they can have on people's lives, I just want to circle back to your first one about feeling like you deserve the job, feeling like
Yes.
you've earned the job.
Yes.
If you are a person who deep down, maybe it's not so deep, like imposter syndrome is pretty at the surface, but we
Yeah.
have seen leaders, and I'm going to piss somebody off because I'm going to say, personally, I have seen more of these kind of leaders be men,
Yes.
where they will never admit to themselves or anybody else that they don't feel like they deserve the job.
Right.
But there is some proving in themselves that they
Yeah.
are feeling like maybe they went from a job to another job that they probably got, in this case that I'm talking about, through bias. Like maybe there were a bunch of contenders, they got the job because they knew somebody, and this happens with women too, but traditionally it's more
Yes.
so men, where
Yeah.
we see there's a big opening because somebody retires and it's like a C-level position. Well, we got to look from outside.
Yeah.
Which is always to me so stupid. Like, really? Okay. So they bring somebody in from outside who has none of the institutional
Institutional
knowledge,
knowledge. Yeah. Right.
and that person doesn't want to seem like they're flailing, but of course they're
Right.
going to flail because
Yeah.
they've just been given this huge job and they don't have institutional knowledge.
Yeah. Well, men like to fake it way better than women do, right?
They
Women at
do.
least will
Yeah.
lean into it and maybe, I mean, they won't necessarily admit it, but they'll certainly lean into those feelings. Men's feelings of imposter syndrome, I think, come out a lot more in faking it, right?
Yeah.
Like the manifestation of imposter syndrome in both women and men is very different.
Yes. And it can happen in both of them, but one of the actions I see as that manifestation is let's reorg
Oh yeah.
the organization.
Oh yeah.
Chaos.
Yeah.
Mass
Let's
chaos.
cause lots of chaos so nobody actually looks at what I'm doing and how I'm feeling. But if we're all doing stuff and everybody's very busy, I mean, I did organizational transformation for a
Right.
number of years. So
You've
yes, I'm
seen it.
very familiar with that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So this is not just consequential to yourself. It is consequential to others. If you cannot find joy in the moment, even
Right.
in those moments where you are being stretched and you have fear, you have to be able to access joy and self-worthiness in
Yeah.
order to not hurt yourself and others. Okay. I'm off my soapbox for the moment.
You said something before that was really interesting that made me think of something. We all have all of these, our brain is like hardwired with all of these biases. You mentioned like the negativity bias, the scarcity, there's a million things. There's a cloak of invisibility, so many biases. And one of the things that I love to talk about, because that negativity bias can undermine your happiness at every single turn, right? I mean, it can come up in so many different ways. And I mentioned this in my TEDx, and this was a huge habit. Like, this is a happiness habit that I would love for people to start to do in order specifically to overcome this negativity bias. And this one comes from I was lucky enough to have him as my professor when I was in college at the University of Pennsylvania. So it's Dr. Martin Seligman, who is the founder of this entire positive psychology movement, right? And all the science and everything behind it. And he says, after 6 months of doing this one simple activity, there is literally less documentation, less documented depression. So we are talking like medical condition here. And when I tell you what it is that you have to do, you will laugh at me. But once he said there is in 6 months less depression, I implore everybody to do it. And it ties directly into this negativity bias. And I call it keeping a joy journal, right? And it goes right to that joy idea. So what I say that you need to do is every night before you go to sleep, write down 3 things that brought you joy. And they can be tiny little small things. Like I found this soundproof room in my building and I don't have to listen to all of the noise on New York City streets. And that made it possible for this podcast to actually go, right? Or my 3 o'clock meeting got canceled and I found a half an hour of free time. Or I had the most amazing sandwich for lunch and that brought me joy. By writing down 3 things that brought you joy, you are consciously overcoming that negativity bias and you're allowing yourself to re-experience the joy again and again because you're remembering it, you're writing it. Something happens when we write stuff down, right? It happens neurologically. So I think that in order to overcome that negativity bias, that is a key happiness habit.
You're going to be very, very proud of me.
You have a joy journal. That's awesome.
Okay, I call it a glad brag because
that's awesome. Perfect.
On the front is gratitude, things that I was grateful for.
Sure.
So gratitude and joy are very close. Joy is a little higher in the frequency, but they're very close. And then so you get, little dopamine on this side, and then brag. So glad and brag. So things awesome. I did that was awesome, like things I did that I'm proud of, and it can be so little. Like I found the coupon in my purse and I was able to get 20% off at the grocery store or whatever it was.
Exactly. Anything. Now let me ask you a question, Denise. Do you ever go back and look at the stuff? Like, do you ever thumb through old journals and kind of revisit those kind of things?
Yes, but I'm going to be very honest. I rarely do this because the look back is very, very helpful. It's very helpful. But I have changed. I've changed as a result of practicing joy.
Sure.
I don't even really need this anymore because like you said, 6 months. And so I used to be, so again, I don't know if this is just a Midwest thing, but it's like we had like this much of an emotional spectrum that was allowed. Right. And I had a phrase like, well, don't get your hopes up. Like I would say shit like that all the time. And it was like if you were joyful, something bad, lightning was gonna strike.
Yeah, right. And so if I actually get this thing, something bad is bound to happen.
Yeah. So I'm bringing out David Hawkins, his little emotional funnel here, and joy is way the hell up here. Happiness is so high, but everything else is contraction, is heavy, is weighty. It makes us feel inflammation. It makes us feel like there's an elephant on our chest and all that stuff. But that's where we live. That's where we all live most of the time. So once I got, okay, I'm going to go to something you just said. You time traveled back in time to your day and found these little things, even if it was only 20 minutes ago, even if it was only a few hours ago. But as you know, the brain doesn't know the difference between past, present, and future. So whatever happened in the past, you can go back and rewrite it or amp it up, as you're saying. Like, oh, wait, that strawberry I had for breakfast. Damn, that was good. Like, you can recreate that moment. But because of negativity bias, most of us go back to a conversation we had with our boss where they said something we didn't like, or a coworker who sent us an email that we didn't like. And that's where your brain is going to go.
Exactly.
It's got to track for that. And you have to be careful. So what you're telling us to do is intentionally go back in time and find the joy in something. And then you'll start to be able to do it more in real time.
Well, like I say, for me, it's about re-experiencing it and squeezing all the joy out of it, right? So by re-remembering it, by writing it down, you get to re-experience it. And there's neuroscientific research that says that your brain, your neural pathways will start to rewire for that happiness. So the
Yeah.
more that you can re-experience it, you're actually growing those parts of your brain to experience more happiness. So I think that negativity bias happens to all of us, right? You can get 10 great things and one crappy thing, and you are focusing on the one crappy thing no matter what you do. But by doing the joy journal and by kind of retraining your brain and getting out of that, our brains are not hardwired for happiness. We've got to do stuff that's going to pull us out of it. But that one is so easy. And Dr. Seligman says it's less depression, so I am on it.
It's such a good one. It's such a good one. And when another little tool you can do, it's not quite happiness, but for the brag side of it,
Yeah.
because a lot of people are beating themselves up all the time. They can't find something to
Sure.
be proud about.
Yeah.
I literally have a go-to moment in my brain where I will go back to when I was a decent softball player in the 6th grade.
Yeah.
It's the only time I've been a really good athlete. I don't know why, but and I remember pitching a no-hitter and catching the line drive that was the last out. And for me, if I go back to that moment, I can feel the serotonin just like filling me up. So
Right.
pick one cool thing you've done in your life. It doesn't matter how
Exactly.
little you were. It doesn't matter. As long as it was awesome, you can go back and feel it. And then
That's
it might be
exactly right.
easier for you to do the joy stuff, you know?
Exactly right. And I will say, I'll build on that just to take it to the present moment. Let's say something great happens to you. Take yourself outside and enjoy a sunset or whatever it is. Go for ice cream. Do whatever it is. Like stack another activity that brings you happiness. It's whatever it is. It's up to you. So whether you're eating an ice cream cone or you're sitting in the park, but you're stacking the joy. You're remembering this one experience. You're putting another beautiful experience on top of it. So you are squeezing the joy, squeezing the happiness out of it. I love that.
I love that so much. And you might want to call it a celebration stack or
Oh, I love it.
a savor stack.
Yes. Yes.
Right? I
Yeah,
love that because
true.
then you're associating a reward, like, oh, with something that happens all the time. Oh, sunset. Wow.
Yeah.
No, savor the sunset and stack it onto this, like
Yeah.
associate it with that. Oh,
Yeah.
next
Yeah.
time you
Yeah.
see a sunset, you might associate it with happiness. Again, new neural pathways for it. Oh, love it. Love it. Okay. There's another thing in your talk that I just want to understand better, which is day-tight compartments. Can you say a little bit
Sure.
about that?
Yes. Okay. I love this one. So this one is from Dale Carnegie, who wrote a very famous book, who in the talk I say it was in the 1940s, but I have now been corrected that it is the 1930s. Okay. So this man's book has been, and it still is. If you look on Amazon right now, his book is like, top, I want to say top 50, but it's beyond top 50. It's how to win friends, influence people, some combination of that. But look, the book has its own issues as it comes from the 1930s, and you can imagine, and some of it is hokey as hell. But there are some really great kernels that you can pull out of it. And this day-tight compartment is one of the things that he talks about. So this is what this one is about. So if you imagine that, kind of think about the movie, I'm sure you've seen the movie Titanic, right? So in the movie Titanic, there's that pivotal climactic moment where the boat springs a leak, and it's down in the steerage and water comes rushing in, and this is going to be the downfall of the entire ship. Well, now what ships have, and probably more than, I'm sure this goes back in the 1950s or whatever it is, but the captain of these huge ships have the ability to press a button. And they press a button and these huge, massive steel walls come down. So wherever the leak is, they can contain it, right? They bring down these steel walls and the leak becomes contained to this one little compartment. It becomes a watertight compartment and the ship can no longer sink. So the ship is able to continue on with its journey, and we've isolated the problem by bringing down these huge metal walls. Now, what I say is, if you ever have an anxiety, if you ever have a worry, if you ever have those annoying freaking voices in your head that sometimes won't shut up, What I am suggesting that you do is you bring down the walls, right? You isolate it, you compartmentalize it in your brain, and you really kind of use that visual of bringing down these walls. You create a day tight compartment where you're putting those worries, but you're isolating it and you're continuing to move forward with your goals, with your journey to get to your destination. But you're not allowing the leaks, the anxieties, the worries to get you off course. So I loved that analogy because I think that a lot of women struggle with that ability to compartmentalize. I think, to be perfectly honest with you, I feel like men are a little bit better at this than women are. But if you can create a compartment for those worries and allow yourself to keep moving forward, you will do yourself such a favor when it comes to happiness.
I love that. I have not heard of that. I'm going to try it. I love it. And it probably helps to tell yourself something helpful. I'm thinking about the Titanic thing. Like, yeah, it's still there. I mean, you can't erase that it's gone, that you can't just like magically the water's gone. But it's not harming anything. It's all going to be
Exactly.
okay. We're going to be okay.
Exactly. You've isolated, it's still happening. It's just not derailing you. You're not allowing it to pull you off of what it is that you really want to accomplish. Yes, it's going to be there. It's annoying. We've got tools to shut that stuff up too, but bring down the walls and allow yourself to continue on with your journey.
I love that. Okay, there's one thing I just want to say before we leave with people, and also we need to get how they can contact you, and anything else you want to tell us. But this may not be a distinction we need to make, but I just want to tell people there is talking about happiness and saying you're happy,
Yes.
and then there is feeling happy. And if you are really, really stressed out and anxious, that energy, literally, everything around us is vibrating. That particular vibration of fear, guilt, grief, shame, whatever, shame is the heaviest. They're heavy. They get stuck in your body. And just check in with us right now. You can, if you're experiencing fear or anything like that, just go into your body and feel where it is. For most people, it's in their chest. For some people, it's on their shoulders. So we don't even have to call it an emotion. It's just a feeling. And then I want you to do any of these assignments that Jessica has given you. Pick the easiest one, and then feel in your body where something different is happening. It might feel like a flutter. It might feel like relief.
Yep.
It might feel very unfamiliar, but it is,
Pressure lifting.
yes, it is pressure lifting. So, and it may take a while because you have all the inflammation from all the fear and the worry and the doubt and the guilt. Guilt
Yep.
is second only to shame in terms of heaviness.
Yeah.
And you can imagine why we have those. We have those emotions because they keep us sociologically safe. Like,
Yes.
ooh, if I have guilt, then, you know, I'll be small and I won't piss people off and stuff like that. So they make sense from an evolutionary perspective. But you'll drown in them. Back to watertight compartments, you'll drown in those emotions. So if you're doing the journal, but you are not actually feeling the feeling in the body that corresponds with that thing, it's not gonna work.
No, that's exactly right. And I said, write down 3 things that happened to you that day that brought you joy. Let's be honest. Some days there are not 3 things. Write down 1 thing.
Mm-hmm.
That works too. Write down, do it, take these kind of habits because truly they are habits. They are happiness habits. Take the habits that work for you, give them some time to actually build, and you will, it is in the science. Like, this is not words. This is science. This is proven strategies, but give it some time to work and you will feel it. And it is about so much more than talking about it. In fact, don't talk about it at all. Just do the stuff. Just do the stuff. Talking about it in this case might almost be counterproductive, right? Because if you talk about the lack of happiness that you're feeling all the time, you're going to be really, you're going to put yourself on a spinning top around, oh my God, why am I not happy? But start to build the habits. The habits will bring happiness.
And you can maybe walk a dog and watch how the dog reacts to the environment.
Absolutely.
And, like, sniffing something and the tail starts to wag, or seeing another dog and the tail starts to wag.
Exactly.
And, yeah. So get a puppy, but there's a lot of things.
Oh gosh. Oh, a puppy.
Or maybe remember when your dog was a puppy, and whatever it takes to get you into that vibration
Yes,
of
yes, yes.
joy. For me, it's also swing sets.
Ah, swing sets is a good one.
If I walk by a swing set on a walk, I will get on the swing set.
Oh, really? That's great. For me, it's really just, I mean, and this is ironic coming from a New Yorker who's lived in New York her whole entire life, but being in nature does it for me. I just feel like there's something about being in nature that just lets me go, like I don't know what it is. I can't explain it, but it must be
Yeah,
something in the vibration and the energy and all that stuff.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And people can walk in nature, but have their head full of anger and all that stuff. But when you really focus on nature and you really just allow yourself to be present in nature, that stuff will melt away. So brilliant. Okay. Anything else that we need to cover?
Well, there is one thing,
Yeah.
and I will say this: it's another key to happiness at work, and it's a pretty easy one because it's just kind of a very introspective exercise. So I would challenge your audience to think about this. I feel like at work, oftentimes we're so focused on all of the stuff that we're not good at. Everybody always likes to talk about the stuff that we need to get better at, right? And we feel like we're not doing a good job unless we're focusing on the weaknesses. We got to fix the weaknesses. And I challenge you to do this. Focus on your strengths. Do the stuff that you are good at every single day. If you do the stuff that you are good at, now sometimes it's a little bit of a tall order to figure out, okay, what is it that I'm actually good at? But if you give yourself a moment to think about it, but if you do the stuff that you are good at every single day, you will feel infinitely more satisfied, content, fulfilled, happiness at work. So stop focusing on all the weaknesses and focus on the stuff that you're good at.
Absolutely. And there is probably somebody you could delegate the stuff you're not good at who is good at
Exactly.
that. So if you can figure
Exactly.
that out, wait, you like doing that?
Well, I just feel like we need to change the conversation. I understand to a certain degree, like, we want to get better. We want to be a more well rounded human being at work. But I really think in all of that talk about weaknesses and opportunity areas, we forget to get good and better at the stuff that we're good at. And we're all good at stuff. You just need to access that stuff.
It's so true. It's so true because otherwise you'll just be debilitatingly sad.
Exactly. Exactly.
All right. I love it. Can I ask you a few fun questions?
Sure.
All right. When you were little, was there something you wanted to be when you grew up, or was it just always management consultant?
Yes, it was clearly always management consultant and also happiness expert. No, when I was little, what I wanted to be was a ballerina who on the side was also president of the United States. That gives you big insight into who I am as a human being.
Which brings me to my second question. If you could appoint a president of the United States and you knew that that person was going to be okay, like they weren't going to be, harmed in any way,
Yeah.
and it was going to go okay, and they were going to be able to use their strengths, and they were going to be able to be happy, who would you appoint?
To be president of the United States. Oh God, this is a big one.
You can have a few or none. It's
Well, okay. I would do, who I love, who I adore, and I love her whole life philosophy. And she has built one of the most amazing businesses that we all like, category transformation. So I know that she has the capability and the potential to do it. It is Sarah Blakely, the founder
yes.
of Spanx.
Oh, so
Love
good.
her. Love her, right?
So
Perfect.
good.
She would be great president. Plus,
Oh
she's
my
got that
God.
whole I Love Lucy energy, which I adore. She'd be perfect.
So many good things about her. She could have imposter syndrome because she doesn't
Yes.
have, I don't even know if she has a degree. But
Yeah.
I don't know if you know her story, but when she was 16, she lost a friend suddenly. Her best friend was killed. And her dad just came in and gave her a whole box of
Yeah.
cassettes, Stephen
Yeah.
Covey's success. Was it Stephen
Yeah.
Covey, I think?
No, it was
No.
Dyer, I
Oh,
think.
Wayne Dyer.
Yeah.
Wayne Dyer, one of those guys.
Yeah.
One brilliant,
Yeah.
higher evolved, high vibrating people. And it was her lifeline.
Yeah. I know to
And
hear her talk about that is fascinating.
it's so fascinating. And she is one of those people who feels fear, but doesn't let it stop her because of
Yeah.
all the
I
things she
love her.
did.
I love her. And she's creative and I adore her. I have to say
I'm
I'm very
voting for
proud.
her.
I'm very proud of my choice.
Let's do it. I'm very excited about your choice too. All right. And So, for those people who are having trouble lifting themselves to joy, there is another little hack that I have all of my clients do. I have all of my clients create a playlist of awesome. And every song on it has to be something that elevates them. So, it may not elevate me, it has to elevate them. So, what would be or is your number one song on your playlist of awesome that always makes you feel
Mm,
happy when you listen to it?
okay. I'm having like a Harry Styles moment. I'm enjoying Harry Styles. So I feel like there's got to be some song that Harry Styles, I don't know, as it was, I don't know.
Yes, that's
His
what I was
his music,
thinking.
right? His music just makes me joyful. So I'm going to
Totally.
say as it was.
And the crazy thing is the lyrics of that are sad,
Yeah,
but it is, you cannot help but boogie around your
exactly.
kitchen when it's playing. Or,
Exactly.
I mean, it's it's so good. It's so
Yeah.
good. All right. I approve of all of your answers,
Excellent. Thank you.
as if I wouldn't. All right. So, Jessica, this has been so fun. Where can people reach you?
Sure. So I am all over the interwebs, but the easiest way to find me is to just go to jessicaweiss.com. And once you're there, you can find the Instagram, the LinkedIn, the TikTok, the whole thing. But jessicaweiss.com is a great place to find everything that I do, and everything that I love to write about and recommendations and all that kind of stuff.
Awesome. And I have a feeling we're going to be friends.
Awesome. I love it, Denise. This was so much fun.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your wisdom.
Thank you.